Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Kirk Behnke, and I am your presenter today for the Basics of Universal Design for Learning, UDL, in the K-12 setting. I would like to thank AbleNet for putting this together today, and clicking to my next slide. After today's session, you will receive an email with a link to the presentation slides that you're seeing today, as well as a certificate of attendance, as well as additional handouts if applicable. There might be a web site that I would like to refer you to in addition to what we're sounding here at this point in time. Apparently, you're also going to get a special offer from AbleNet, so that sounds good. So you might want to make sure that you have the right email address that you registered for this webinar today. Also, if you cannot join us today or you need to leave for some reason, you can use this link at the bottom to listen to the recording of this webinar session, and that's at www.ablenetinc.com/AU. So thank you so much for joining us today. One of the things that we need to talk about is, of course, technical difficulties. As we all know, sometimes we do have some technical difficulties. So what I'd like to do is just to remind you of some tips that they have come up with is maximize your screen view by clicking on the link in the upper right-hand corner. Also close any other applications that you are running that use bandwidth, your email, some web pages, things like that. If you can close those down, that would be great because that will help you with your bandwidth and making sure that the audio is in sync with the visual presentation. If you hear an echo, you could be logged in twice, so you might want to close out one of your connections that you have there. Also, if you hear some audio cutting in and out, click your mute audio button, and you hopefully will see that at the top of your browser window. Wait a couple of seconds and then play audio to reestablish the broadcast audio feed. There you go. Okay, enough of that. Those are the tips, and so what I'd like to do is just find out a little bit about who you are. I would like you to go on your screen and please tell us who you are. Could you tell us if you're a parent, a teacher, an administrator, an AT specialist, a therapist, an SLP, a speech language pathologist, an occupational therapist or a physical therapist, a special educator, a university professor, and or that great catch-all, that other. We really want to find out exactly who you are, what you want to do here, and I'll try to adapt as much as I possibly can with the material that I have. Okay, it looks like I have 35 responses. I have 48 in the room. Here we go. Keep going, keep going. So I think we are getting good. All right, so here's our results today. We have, many of you are your AT specialists. We also have our OTs, PTs, and speech language pathologists, and some special educators, some administrators, some teachers, and of course that other. Great. Thank you very much for this snapshot. I really appreciate us taking advantage of that. So I'm going to be speaking to y'all, sorry. I'm from Houston. So if I go into my southern dialect, please forgive me ahead of time. I do have to tell you that it's kind of funny right now because actually at my office right now we have no electricity. I am doing this webinar in the dark. So I have my little flashlight on the phone. I have my laptop with just the laptop screen. And so anyway, you have to bear with me on my end with my technical assistance. It's amazing what happens when you rely too much on that good old electricity spit. All right. Anyway, what we're trying to do today is our UDL origins and overview. What we're trying to do is find out what is this thing we call Universal Design for Learning, aka UDL. And then also, why UDL? Why do we really need to understand this whole concept around Universal Design for Learning? And I'll tell you, just to give you a sneak peek, is that the Universal Design for Learning is all about curriculum. And it's about access for all students with just access for all students. And when we can include some of our special needs kids, as well as our ELL kids, as well as our gifted and talented kids, these are the marginalized students that tend to also need many different types of accommodations and modifications. What we like to do is extend this UDL framework to just the general curriculum itself. We're also going to talk briefly about the brain networks, which are recognition, strategic, and effective. We're also going to talk about whether this should be a special ed or a general ed initiative. And in fact, it's really not an initiative. It's really a framework for how we look at curriculum. We're also going to be looking at universal design and not where the UDL really has come from and has branched off from. We also are going to be talking very quickly about research bases around universal design for learning and give you some resources to find out more about UDL and the research behind it. And lastly, we're going to talk about some of the components of what is a UDL curriculum. So let's look at what is UDL. So in an elevator statement, and when I say elevator statement, I mean you have the limited time to talk about a certain topic because you're ready to get off at the next floor. So the elevator statement that Rose and Gravel came up with from CAST in 2010 is looking at it's a framework for instruction organized around 3 principles based upon the learning sciences. So when we look at that, we want to and underline 3 words here. You look at framework, you look at 3 principles, and you look at learning sciences. So when we think about UDL, we really think about a framework for instruction that's organized. And it's really about the curriculum. Traditionally in special education, we always have looked at how can we help modify the environment or accommodate for the student with a disability in the classroom. This is kind of the flip side of it, if you will. This is where we're looking at the curriculum and making it more accessible from the beginning so that all students, regardless of ability, disability, ESL, English language learners, etc., can gain access to the curriculum because of some of the components we're going to talk about today. It's also based on 2 decades of research into the nature of learning differences and the design of supportive learning environments. So when we look at some of these ideas of what is universal design for learning, let's break this down a little bit. We really have about 20 years of research into this nature. And then also about the learning differences. Now many of you probably either are teachers or assistive technology personnel or administrators, and you've identified and have gone through many batteries or assessments of your own self trying to figure out what type of learner you are and which way that you like best to learn. And those basically go down into 3 categories. One is a visual learner, one is an auditory learner, and one is a kinetic learner. Basically, you like to do things. I myself, I'm a haptic learner. In other words, I like to do all 3. I don't really consider myself any one particular advantage, and of course that also depends on the content. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we move along in this area. Because this is a webinar and because this is only 1 hour, I've tried to look at how we can make this a little bit more interactive. But again, this is, just the nature of the beast, and you probably can't see this slide very well. But what I'd like to do is just pause here for a second to give you an anticipation reaction guide. And basically, let's look at your thinking about what, or activate your background knowledge around universal design for learning, and look at what these statements have to offer. And I want you to either agree or disagree to these statements. The first one is, UDL supports the notion that we should teach to the average student. So think about that in your, whether you agree or disagree with that statement. The second thing is the primary purpose of UDL is to provide teachers with instructional strategies. Agree or disagree? third statement, the power of UDL is in its design, the power to be flexible, allowing choices. Agree or disagree? UDL has 5 broad principles. Actually, I probably already gave you that answer earlier in the slides. Hopefully you were paying attention. So do you agree or disagree on that one? The next statement, UDL focuses on success for the struggling learner. The next statement, engagement is the most important UDL principle. And then lastly, a goal of UDL is to reduce barriers in the curriculum. Now, what I usually do in a face-to-face training is that I review a video at the CAST website, which is called UDL Principles and Practices. But since we don't have a whole lot of time, and of course the bandwidth on webinars is quite limited with videos, we might want to see if we might want to skip this. So let me go ahead and go over these statements with you. The first one is UDL supports the notion that we should teach to the average student. Agree or disagree? Really, that is a disagree. That UDL supports the notion that we should teach to all students, not just the average student, not just to the 80% that's in the classroom, but that we should teach and plan and provide flexible methods, means, goals, and assessments for all of our students. The primary purpose of UDL is to provide teachers with instructional strategies. That could be a primary purpose, but it is about the curriculum and gaining access to the curriculum. You can go either way on that one. I think that's a bit of a trick question. But the primary purpose of UDL is really to provide teachers with instructional strategies as well as good educational goals, methods, materials, and assessments. The power of UDL is in its design, the power to be very flexible, allowing choices. Now that is 100% agreed. That's what about universal design for learning is about, the design piece, and we're going to break that down a little bit. UDL has 5 broad principles? No. UDL has 3 broad principles, and hopefully you'll be able to latch your head around that, and what they are is multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. Those are the 3 broad principles which we will cover. UDL focuses on success for the struggling learner. Actually, UDL focuses on success for all learners. Struggling learners tend to also benefit far from this. And when I mean struggling, I just don't mean by disability, but also English as a second language, gifted and talented, autistic, etc. So hopefully that will help you with your anticipation reaction guide. Engagement is the most important UDL principle, and yes, that is true. Not that the other principles aren't as important, it's just that engagement is the first one that we consider to be the most important, because if you don't get the student engaged in the activity or in the curriculum, then the other 2 really kind of fall out. So engagement is the primary important UDL principle. The goal of UDL is to reduce barriers in the curriculum. Yes, the goal of UDL is really to sort of reduce those barriers and increase usability and access to the curriculum. So hopefully we will talk a little bit more about each one of these areas, and that will help you in your learning and understanding about what is universal design for learning. So what is UDL? UDL is to support learning, provide multiple means of, as I said, representation, multiple means of action and expression, and then multiple means of engagement. So when we look at learning differences and how we all learn differently, and again, dependent upon content, is we want to look at the learning brain. And the learning brain has 3 networks of learning. The recognition network, the strategic network, and the affective network. And we're going to go into those in just a little bit. just want to show you that I do have the UDL Principles in Practice. The video is at the CAST website, and the CAST is the Center for Accessible Special I just lost my train of thought. The Center for Accessible Special Technology website. They also have their own YouTube channel on YouTube, and again, I will share that with you later on and during the resources part. Now, here is a quick snapshot of the Universal Design for Learning Guidelines that is available through CAST. It's also available through the National Center on Universal Design for Learning. And this is where you can see the learning guidelines. And the nice thing about the Universal Design for Learning Guidelines is that they are all color-coded as well. So when we look at providing multiple means of representation, that's the first column on the left, you look at how you can provide options for perception, how you can provide options for language development, language pieces. You can also provide options for comprehension, and those are 3 areas that they call checkpoints. So when you look at the Universal Design for Learning Guidelines, those are the areas that you want to look at when it comes to providing multiple means of representation. The wonderful thing about the UDL Guidelines is this is the 1.0 version, which basically is the paper-based version. They have a UDL Guidelines 2.0, which actually is a really great online linking type of activity, and I'm just where you would actually go into the UDL CAST website and you can click on any one of these areas or checkpoints and guidelines, and then actually get examples and further information. We don't have an opportunity to do that at this particular time via the webcam, via the webinar, but I encourage you to go to cast.org and look at the Universal Design for Learning Guidelines 2.0 version. Okay, next. So when we look at universal design, we look at 40 years of research, that not only 2 decades of implementation, but also 40 years of research when we look at the brain and how it works. We also look at there is no typical student, so everybody is not teaching to the average student. You're actually teaching and providing access and flexibility to all of those students. So the nice thing is that variability is the norm. So it's not that the kids who get C's, B's, whatever, are the kids you teach to. It's actually the variety of kids in the classroom is the norm. And as we look at public schools in the K-12 settings now, we know that there's a ton of diversity out there currently in our schools, in our classrooms. And that's great. We want to embrace that diversity and include that. How can we do that in our curriculum and development is another story. That's exactly where we go with the implementation piece. But the variability is systematic. So we can look at a framework. We can look at how we can systemically teach all of our kids. And that abilities are not static. We don't have, sometimes we have really good reading skills. And that's be great in reading language arts, but then we might not have good concept or math skills. So it really depends upon the content. If we look into a response to intervention guide, this is my big soapbox. If we look at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 interventions, we really want to look at that in the content areas that we're teaching. We might have really good math and science kids, and then really bad, kids, not bad kids, kids who struggle and need more supports in the reading language pieces, etc., or vice versa, depending upon the individual learning and how unique it is when it comes to learning in different environments. Okay, so here we go. 3 distributed systems. We have the recognition piece, which is in the back of the brain. We have the strategic piece, which is in front of the brain, the frontal lobe system. And then our affective, which is really sort of our middle brain that we really look at. And these are all based on the brain-based research that comes with this, with universal design for learning. Now we're going to look at each one of these. So the recognition network, when we look at that, is really the what of learning. This specialized to sense and assign meaning to patterns that we see. They enable us to identify and understand information, ideas, and concepts. So it's about that what piece of learning. What are we learning? What are we recognizing? How can we assign meaning to something else that we already know about? So when we look at those recognition networks, it's recognizing how that information should be looked at and how we can compare it to other things. Your compare, contrast, activating your background knowledge, your cultural learning differences, things like that are extremely important in this recognition piece, the what of learning. The second network is the strategic networks, the how of learning. How do I learn this? How am I going to function? How am I going to get this into my brain? You've seen a lot of kids sort of tapping their foreheads when they're trying to learn something, and they're literally trying to get the information into their brains. So what Hallmeyer and Rose from 2012 say is that relate primarily to the executive functions and specialize to generate and oversee mental and motor patterns. They enable us to plan, execute, and monitor actions and skills. So when we look at these pieces, that's those executive functioning parts of the brain. How many of you know how you organize yourself and how you like to organize yourself, or whether it be Post-it notes on trying to remind yourself what you need to do, or whether it's technology-based, or whether it's just jotting things down in your hand, etc. We all have different styles of how we strategically attack certain tasks and learning environments. So this is a huge concept to understand, is the how of learning. How are we going to learn this, and where is it going to be placed actually in our brains? Some of the things why it's important to explicitly teach strategies, and here's a couple of cartoons that have been up here as well as pictures, is that you really want to make sure that you teach strategies to the best abilities. Because if you were a bicyclist and you had cars running in and out of you, that might not be the strategic way of putting the bicycle lane right in the middle of the road. Or why put a telephone pole right in the middle of someone's driveway to their garage? Or another garage picture is looking at building a garage where 2 trees are there, and the garage is built with the doors right in front of the trees. And then the last picture is looking at a prison escape going under a tunnel, and then actually going and hitting an outhouse. So I'll leave you with that image as we move to the next slide. So the strategic piece was very important to do. The affective networks, the last network that we want to look at, is the why of learning. And this is again in the middle of the brain, and it's the area, they're specialized to evaluate patterns and assign them to emotional significance. They enable us to engage with tasks and learning and the world around us. So this is important that we understand the affective networks. Sort of what's the passion around it? Why do we get so excited about it? What can we personally take out of this? And there's been some studies about music, associating music with different ways of learning or studying, different types of environments for that to help with the affective networks, sort of that, emotional side. If you think about it, and I would have pulled up a video, but unfortunately I cannot do that. But one of the videos that I think would be kind of cool would be to look at the movie Jaws. So let's think about being out on the ocean in a boat, and it's a clear day, beautiful day. It's not real choppy. It's very calm, etc. And you're out on the boat, moving right along, no problems. Everything seems to be great. And then all of a sudden, your friend starts to sing, da-dum, 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 da-dum. So all of a sudden, it's funny, but, you know, it doesn't that get your heart racing? And that music, because you activated your background knowledge, because you've seen the movie Jaws, you know that in the movie, when you start to hear that music, it starts to trigger an emotional offense, or an emotional, triggering your emotional side. It's actually triggering your affective network to say, okay, now I need to get excited, or I need to prepare, or I need to fight or flight type of thing. And so that's why the affective network is so important, because it taps your emotional side of learning. So all these networks are interconnected. So if you took the idea of just wrapping a present, you know, the recognition side of it is that you're recognizing that you, one of your friends has a birthday, and you want to buy them a really special gift. Your strategic piece is knowing where to go get the gift, knowing how to purchase the gift, knowing that I need to actually wrap it or place it in a gift bag. Love gift bags. You know, with some curly ribbon, whatever. And then the affective network is really making it special for that individual, because you really want them to have that gift. Your affective network is using your emotional side of how you would want to prepare that gift, ensuring that that gift is appropriate for them, that they'll really love it, etc. So all those networks, in order for you to learn, can be as simple as just wrapping a gift. So when we understand the interrelations to that, it helps us to understand that there's no single solution that works for everyone. So what we really must do is we must employ that flexibility of content, flexibility of materials, flexibility of methods into our classrooms to ensure that we have that flexible pieces that are in there, because everyone is different. We want to include alternatives to different tasks, assessments, groupings, etc. We want to provide as much alternatives as we possibly can. We also appreciate the differences that everyone comes to. So if you're a teacher in front of the classroom and you really understand that the differences that every individual person can make, that makes such a nicer classroom when we look at how we can incorporate universal design for learning. Some days, you know, there are leaders in your classroom, some days they're not, or it depends upon the content, and you can appreciate those differences. The other piece that around the interrelations is really setting these appropriate learning goals. I can't tell you enough how many IEPs I've been into, and the goal was just ludicrous. It was so limiting for the individual to do, because it was based on the activities that were happening in the class, which were very strict. In other words, you will read the chapter in chapter 3 within your book, and then you will write a 3-paragraph essay on what you've learned. That's not a goal. The goal should be looking at what are you trying to achieve in this lesson. Is the chapter 3 on photosynthesis? If not, could there be other alternative ways of accessing that same information that could be engaging, could provide multiple means of representation, and could also provide multiple means of action and expression of how to show them what they know, have these kids being engaged in the content, but also show that they know a lot about photosynthesis. But it doesn't have to come from a chapter in the book and then write a 3-paragraph essay on photosynthesis. Some kids can be really creative and working in videography, or drawing the water cycle, or not the water cycle, the photosynthesis cycle. You know, or working in groups and trying to get more engaged and drill down into the content of that lesson plan itself. As we know through core curriculum and through these standards that we're having nationwide, is that we really need to drill down more into the basis of the curriculum and looking into how can we provide modifications, accommodations, but also what are some of the things that are already built into the classroom, into the curriculum that we could utilize to help our kids with special needs. So then we also want to focus on reducing those barriers within the curriculum. And that's what, universal design for learning is really all about. Again, traditionally in special education, we have looked from the accommodation side, always accommodating for our students. But on the reverse is we're looking at the curriculum as a whole first and designing it to include everyone within the class. Okay, so let's take a minute, and you need to think on your own, is that based on what you've learned so far about universal design for learning, what are 2 key points you might share with a colleague about the relationship between brain networks and learning? So go ahead and write those down now. Write them on a Post-it note, write them in a Word document, whatever the case might be, so that you can then go back and implement what you're learning here today. This is a part of the piece when we talk about professional development, and then I'm a true believer in, it's all about implementation. Just because you've learned something in some place, what are you going to do with that information? So again, write 2 key points that you might share with a colleague. You can put them in the chat window if you wanted to share that with everybody. You can write it down wherever you like to do, but I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do that. So ready, set, go. Two minutes for an online webinar is really long. Does anybody have, if you want to type in your message window now, feel free to do that. Just on a side note, I did get power back, so I'm docking my computer back into my station so I don't run out of power. Just FYI if anybody's interested. Okay, while we're thinking about reflection, this is part that I think that we all need as instructors, as professional development, etc., that we don't provide enough for reflection in our key points that we talk about. Because that's the piece that we need to provide within our professional developments, within our classrooms, etc., to really reflect on what we've learned so far and then take it from there. But that's a side note from me. Okay, next. So why is UDL necessary? Well, what Rose and Meyer from CAS say is that barriers to learning are not, in fact, inherent in the capacities of learners, but instead arise within learners' interactions with inflexible educational goals, materials, methods, and assessments. So those barriers to learning are not, inherent. So those are the things that I think we have to understand, is looking at it from a different perspective. That is that learners' interactions, that is key to that. And traditionally it's been with inflexible goals, as we said earlier. So is UDL special education, or is it general education? Well, when we look at this, let's think about it. Let's think about that universal design for learning really does encompass general ed principles. Experience shows that separate is seldom equal. So when we practice a parallel education systems through separate education, special education programming, we're not really doing ourselves justice. So we really want to encompass all learners. Separating students with certain differences from their own peers suggests that the disability really resides in the individual instead of within the curriculum. So traditionally that's what we have done in the past. But if we open up the curriculum for all students within the classroom, then that's where we can really not only it would be beneficial for a lot of our kids with special needs, but it could be very special, could be very great for somebody who might have a learning difference, a reading disability. If we include some of the technologies that are out there, or some of the other scaffolds that we can put into place as a special educator, a lot of our general ed students might also benefit from them as well. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. In other words, we don't want to look at universal design for learning as that it fits everybody. What it really is, it provides flexibility within the curriculum for all students. All learners have equal and fair access. That's the key piece. So if we can build it, equal and fair in the beginning, then it should be equal and fair to all. We also provides opportunities to learn same content in ways that is best for individual learners. I do have to say that UDL does recognize the current need for special education, and given the design of our current educational system, however, UDL does envision a time when curriculum is designed to be appropriate for all learners. And I think that's a crucial piece to really take that into consideration. I'm sorry if I'm losing you. I'll get closer to the phone. All right. So relationship to universal design is that when we look at universal design, and universal design has been around for a number of years, but it's basically come from architectural point of view of how we design things universally. And the architect Ron Mace basically is the founder of universal design, and he's out of the North Carolina State University. He considers the needs of the broadest possible range of users from the beginning. And I think that's crucial when we look at universal design for learning, is that you want to consider all of the needs of the broadest possible range of students that are going to be in your class. And that's how you would design your curriculum universally. So the other side of that is looking at retrofitting, or the drawbacks of retrofitting. It can be ugly. You've seen these ramps off of public entities, and they're just not pretty. But if you design it from the beginning, you can include many different types of really nice accessibility features, and you won't even know about it. So I'm giving you sort of an analogy when we look at universal design, where if you design it from the beginning, all of your accessibility features and your usability features are already built in. So it's not going to be extra work for the teacher or the special ed teacher, the co-teacher, or the paraprofessional, but it will also be built in place from the beginning. And I think that's important to understand as well, is that when we look at costs, yes, universal design for learning might be a little bit more upfront cost, but if you design it from the beginning to be accessible and usable, then you gain return on your investment when the student can access all the curriculum. So some of the universal design key points is that not one size fits all, but offers alternatives. That's something we've been saying all along. It's also designed from the beginning and not added on later. In other words, you want to ensure that when you're designing good curriculum, you want to make sure that you design it from the beginning. And again, look at the broadest perspective possible, broadest scope of students possible. And it also increases access opportunities. I like to say more usability opportunities for everyone. So it's not just ramps, curbs, cuts, and electric doors, but it's a whole wealth of accessibility and usability features that are already built into the curriculum. Okay. The research basis for UDL is, again, CAS, Center for Applied Special Technology, where they have the neuroscience, they have the research on specific educational practices, they also have research on specific applications of UDL. Here in Houston and Region 4 Education Service Center, as well as for the state of Texas, we're in the initial phases of rolling out Universal Design for Learning curriculum in many different types of districts. Now, just some of the implementation strategies that we have been using so far is one district is actually using it as a rollout for engagement. And it's not just engagement of the curriculum for the students, but it's also been a rollout for engagement of the curriculum for teachers. You know, sometimes you kind of get these teachers that step back away from the curriculum and just kind of get on that rote system, and here we go, here's what we need to do, and I've had these lesson plans for, 8 years now, and I'm not going to change them at all, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. Well, as we know, technology changes, curriculum changes, new books come out, et cetera. So what we need to do is really get the teachers as well as the students engaged in the whole process of what they're doing for the curriculum. So this particular district is taking 3 pilot schools, 1 elementary school, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. And again, they're all focusing on engagement. So we have 3 administrators, along with 3 special educators, along with 3 regular educators, along with 3 IT folks. So they're looking at how they can either design or build capacity within their district as a whole, but then look at each individual campus, dependent upon their grade level, of how they're going to be looking at engagement for students and teachers. And so far this year, it's been going really well. In fact, next week I'm going to be meeting with the Director of Special Education and the Curriculum Design professional and listening to them and looking at their implementation plan and what else we can provide to help them further their curriculum advancement, and then look at some of the pieces that they're doing. They're doing a lot of technology, I have to say. They're doing a lot of web tools, and that's why the IT person is involved. And this is very engaging for many of the students, especially in the high school level, because sometimes in this particular district they had to actually power down. In other words, leave their cell phones and leave their own technologies at home. But now, with this pilot project for this particular high school, they're able to either bring their own technology or utilize computer labs and other portable devices or mobile devices within their district to help them gain access to these web tools that would provide the engagement piece for the curriculum. So they're using everything from Edmodo to online pieces to actually digital materials, digital textbooks, accessible instructional materials that they're able to gain from either Bookshare or Learning Ally for those students with print disabilities. Now that's just for the special ed side, but they're looking at purchasing curriculum as well that is accessible from the publisher themselves, so that they can actually pay for a copy of this book digitally for some of the students that they serve who might not qualify under print disability. So they're really learning a lot, and I got to give them credit for doing this. And this is a medium-sized school district. It's not small or large, but it's a medium-sized school district, and they're doing some really great things. The other school district that I'm working with right now has an iPad 101 initiative. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's what they chose and that's what they're doing. They do have alternatives for accessibility for certain things, for certain students. But the one thing that they had to step back from before they did this whole initial one-on-one integration is that they really needed to look at how they can prepare their teachers, because it's not all about the apps. It's really about the integration and application of the technology for those students. And I'm still working with them on that, and hopefully they're learning a lot from their mistakes, and I can learn from them so that I can carry that on to other other districts as well. Sorry, got a little off tangent there. But I talked to you about, the UDL curriculum and how it's defined, looking at the goals, looking at the methods, looking at the materials, and looking at the assessments. So those are the four major pieces that we need to understand, appreciate, and then also modify as needed. So again, I think I already spoke to you about the goals, like the goals of photosynthesis. It's not to read the whole chapter if you have a kid who might have a 504 plan who is unable to read the book because she happens to be blind, or is there another way that she can gain access to that material for photosynthesis? Now that's just a basic accommodation. However, but what about those kids who might not qualify under special education or 504, that for them to actually read a textbook, 3 chapters, is going to take them a very long time, and they're not engaged in that information. But if they saw a video giving them the essence of what's going on within that chapter, so that they can then build a foundation for what is photosynthesis, or give them activities for understanding what is photosynthesis, that's that multiple means of representation that we talk about as one of the principles of universal design for learning. There's many types of methods on working with universal design for learning, looking at how are we going to methodically apply these principles and methods for teaching that piece. What are some of the materials? Is it going to be technology-based, or is it not going to be technology-based? Is it going to be something with photosynthesis like a seed lesson, where you actually plant seeds in a paper cup, and watch them grow? Or is it going to be, low-tech items? Is it going to be materials that, using, what they're called, slow-motion videography, or frame-by-frame videography, and watching the plant grow from a seed, to help them understand the parts and the process around photosynthesis. And then assessments. Now, when I say assessments, this is my little soapbox, another one of my soapboxes. When we look at assessments, sometimes the assessments is being dictated by the state high-stakes testing. Okay, I know here in Texas it's very, very important. However, my whole piece and my whole feeling around assessment is that if you have really good instruction, when you look at goals, methods, and materials, the kids are getting the teaching and the learning that they need to understand and drill down more into the content, the more likely they're going to do better on standardized tests. Now, good thing this is a webinar that we can't have a huge discussion on this, but maybe that's a bad thing. But what I'd like to see is more of looking at how we can provide universal design for learning types of concepts in our assessment pieces. But, that's Kirk Behnke talking from an office in Houston. But what I would love to see is how we can provide good and quality instruction using a universal design for learning framework, and then also have assessments or different types of benchmark testing or assessments, pieces like that would be engaging for the students so that they can gain access to the content and really understand the content and the curriculum a little bit better. I think that's just a nice way to go when it comes to assessments. I could probably take questions now on regards to any of the UDL piece, but I want to give you one more slide that hopefully will help you understand the concept of universal design for learning. This is a cartoon that says clearing a path for people with special needs clears a path for everyone. And this is a picture outside of a school, and it looks like there's snow on the ramp and on the stairs, and there's a maintenance worker with a shovel in hand that is on the steps. There is a person who's using a wheelchair in the lower left-hand corner, and other kids who seem to be standing around. The person in the wheelchair asks, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" The maintenance person replies, "All these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you." The person in the wheelchair says, "But if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in." And I think this is a nice way to understand what is universal design for learning, is that we need to shovel off the ramp in order for everyone to gain access. And in fact, it can be a lot easier in the long run as long as you design it correctly. And it could also be a great way to achieve student achievement. All right. Again, I have another reflection exercise. So why don't you go ahead and reflect on some of the things that we talked about today in regards to universal design for learning. Again, let me just scooch back here for a second. Let me find the slide. Here's your universal design for learning guidelines. When we look at provide multiple means of representation, provide multiple means of action and expression, and provide multiple means of engagement. So when we reflect on these three principles of universal design for learning, what does that necessarily mean to you, let's say, as an assistive technology specialist? What does that mean to you as a speech-language pathologist, an OT, or a physical therapist? What does that mean to you as an administrator? What are those things that we need to incorporate and learn and understand the concepts around universal design for learning? Again, if we look at networks are interconnected, when we look at our strategic network, our recognition network, and our affective network, these are all brain-based research strategies to help us understand and comprehend and apply content in the area that we're looking at. So that's how we can utilize the three parts of our brain to really gain a better understanding and to learn better. And again, most of us are different types of learners, so we have to keep that flexibility in mind. All right. And then looking at this last picture is looking at how we can provide access for all to the curriculum for the best and the best way to give our students that option for student success. So that's our reflection activity. And then if you wanted to go ahead and put down any reflection activities that you wanted in the chat window, that would be great. This is me. I'm a Senior Education Specialist at Region 4. I'm also the lead for the Texas Assistive Technology Network for the state of Texas. So that's why I do a lot more of the technology piece that we talked about. So this concludes our webinar for today through AbleNet.